morning, dear friends. Good morning. So let's just take a moment to settle in and just acknowledge our body here in this room and coming back to the breath as everyone is settling in. It's a rainy and cloudy day this morning. Can you hear me? The volume up a little bit? Yeah, okay. That's my cue to get into my karaoke posture. Testing, how's that? Good? Great. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Candle. Hi, Jai. Welcome. And welcome to everyone on Zoom. Sherry and hi, Laura. Oh, hey, Charlene. And George. Hi, George. We have, let's see, 28 people on Zoom and about 45 people here or so. 40? Yeah. This morning when I was having breakfast, it started to rain, and I recognized the story I have about where I live in Vancouver on the other side of the river, that it's always gloomy there. As soon as I drive over the 205 over the bridge into Portland, it's like the sun comes out. So I told Joshua when we first bought the house, I said, we live under a dark cloud. And so the next thought that arose was, I just want to be home and just curl up and not go anywhere. And then I remember my commitment. And here we are. And so I'm sure it took something for you to be here, to get up, to choose to take the energy and the effort and follow your intention to be here this morning. So I'd like to acknowledge you for taking refuge in Sangha, in community on this day, and choosing to be among spiritual friends, among other like-minded truth seekers, among practitioners who are also looking at life deeply. And we all hold that interest and that desire to be free from stress, be free from suffering, and to find happiness in the present moment. And also to, as we practice, we benefit ourselves, but we also benefit others. So whatever you leave here with, you'll be touching into the lives of your family and friends and co-workers throughout the week. And this is a practice that benefit the many. So the merits of our practice is, it spreads to others. So it brings me a lot of joy to see that, this is the ground in which peace and compassion and kindness is spread. And also to acknowledge everyone here for the courage that it takes to undergo this journey. It's a very small percentage of us that are willing to look at ourselves, look at our lives, to look at our internal life, our inner world, and to see it and face it, and then to accept that which at times is beyond our control. And I'll be talking about the 5 aggregates today: our thoughts, our feelings, perceptions, the mental formation, and consciousness that are all conditioned and subject to change. So just want to ask, how many of you here are here for the first time? Anyone new to the center today? Okay, great. Well, welcome back, everyone. And what about on Zoom? Is there anyone on Zoom here who is here for the first time? No? All familiar names and faces? Great. Okay. I'm glad we are all back together again. Hi there. And how about we take just a couple minutes to just turn to the people around us, and maybe it's a smile or a bow. And in this tradition, when we bow to each other, we are bowing to the Buddha nature within the other person. And so it's a sign of reverence to the Buddha nature within the other person. And it's calling forth the Buddha nature within us. So let us take a moment to bow to each other, or give each other a smile. And for those of you on Zoom, you can bow to the faces that you see on the screen, and the names. And I know in Japan, when I was there a few years ago, there's this kind of competition with whoever can bow their head lower, has greater respect. At least that's how it occurs to me. And it's just a very humbling demonstration of respect and for one another. I remember I was standing on the street watching as a gentleman opened the taxi door for his friend or colleague or business partner. And as the other man entered the car, he closed the door after him. And then as the taxi drove away, he bowed his head and just stayed like that until the car was far in the distance. And as I watched this action, I was really moved to just see the lingering of, this departure, of this farewell. And it's very different to the conditioning of, being here where we're very rushed. Bye, see ya. And sometimes I will even say bye and I'm not even looking at that person, bye. And then the body's already moving off, especially when I'm at work. There's just not enough time. And so I can't look at you when I'm saying bye, Jim, because I gotta go. So that we can look to some of these really beautiful ways in which we honor each other, and the way it's demonstrated in different cultures and traditions. And my dad always say, learn from the good and take that and integrate that into how we live, how we be with one another. I also recall when I was there in Japan, I had a business meeting with a gentleman, and I was supposed to come at 5:00, but due to travel issues, it turned into 9, and then it turned into 11 p.m. And he's like, I'm here, don't worry, I'll be here waiting. And I came, and he was into the office and he was listening to jazz music. So my partner and I came in, and And he made us feel like he was just already there, and it wasn't like dreading, waiting for us, and it didn't become this thing, and it's really touching. And a friend traveled to come visit and took me to a vegetarian restaurant. And when we met, he brought a gift. And it's really common in the Japanese culture that when we meet after a long period of not seeing each other, offer each other a gift. And later I learned after this 2-hour period, 3-hour period of sharing food together that he traveled for 4 hours just to be there for that one dinner that we had together. And I had no idea. He didn't say, oh my God, the train that I was on was so long and all these people and oh, it was such a rush to try to get here. There was none of that. There was just presence, pure loving presence. And so it's an invitation for us today, whatever it took for us to get here, to be here, to just first give ourselves a pat on the back that we made it safely and we are here in community, and let us offer each other the kindest gift, the most generous gift of presence. And I'd like to also start by, before we go into our meditation, you would have received a handout with the homage to the Buddha and taking refuge in the triple gem. We're going to recite this and then we'll transition into our meditation practice. And for those of you on Zoom, we'll put the chant into the chat. Or Paul, what do you think if is it better share it? Okay, perfect. Okay, so Paul's going to share it on the screen. The 3 jewels, yep. So I'm going to invite the bell, and if you feel called, you can just join your palms at your chest. And in the Buddhist tradition that I grew up in, the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, chanting is a very big part of our practice on Sunday. And chanting is a way that we can learn the teachings and memorize the teachings. And also, when we chant, we are encouraged to chant very loudly. So not only can we hear the vibration of our own words, but it also vibrates and is transmitted to those around us. So I remember when I was growing up, my dad or my sister would always be like, louder, louder. So chanting, but in a way that you hear yourself speaking these words, these, beautiful, wholesome, nourishing words. And then chanting is really wonderful to help calm the mind and the body. And it helps us to build concentration, because in the moment that we chant, we could be reading the word, but there is no connection to it. There's just reading it, but the mind is off into thoughts. And it's very clear because in the next moment, we may skip the word, or we may forget the words, or stumble over it. So it's actually a really great way to see how our concentration is moment by moment. And it's a wonderful practice to build on that. And yeah, listen. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. Namo Dhammaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Namo Sanghaya. Dwelling in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the world. Dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha in myself, I aspire to help all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love. Taking refuge in the Dharma in myself, I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation. Taking refuge in the Sangha in myself, I aspire to help all people build fourfold communities, to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Let us find a comfortable seated upright posture. sitting in such a way that the body is at ease, the mind is alert and awake. And you want to find a posture that you can remain still and taking care to not strain the back, softening the shoulders, the neck. Letting go of any ways in which we often hold our posture. And just allow everything to drop. And let us come back to the in-breath and the out-breath. A meditator is aware if the breath is long or short, if the breath is deep or shallow. Notice the quality of the breath. And maybe just for a few minutes, finding a way to breathe that can bring either more relaxation or energy into the body and mind. Maybe it's breathing in deep and breathing out slow. Maybe it's breathing through the mouth for a moment, the Ujjayi breath. There's a body sitting here. And whether we attempt to do anything or not, the body is breathing. Getting in touch with the breath and the sensations of breathing. And calming the nervous system. You may notice sounds in the space and just including sounds into our practice. Perhaps you could hear the sound of your voice, or the sound of your breath, or the sound of the breath of someone nearby. Letting that bring you back to this moment. Being in this room. Sometimes it's helpful to hear the breathing of another human being as it calls us back to our own breath. And we can also be aware of the movement of the breath, the rising and the falling of the chest and the belly. Feeling the temperature of the room, the temperature in the hands and the legs, and where the sits bone make contact with the chair or the cushion. You're really getting in touch with the experience of sitting, the felt experience of breathing. One of the ways we can practice getting in touch with our internal state is to close the sense doors to the outside, the external, and to choose an object of meditation. This is the breath, and where you feel the breath most predominantly. Maybe it's between the upper lip and the nostrils, or maybe it's in the chest or the belly breathing. Or you might be aware of the whole body breathing. And we can widen or narrow this aperture of mindfulness based on the energy we're experiencing, to widen the aperture or to narrow the aperture. And once the breath reaches a natural rhythm and becomes subtle, see if you can maintain that subtle breath. And it is encouraged that when we practice, we set out with a strong determination to rest in the present moment. Meaning when a thought arises, we choose to set it down. And just like mindfulness is the guard into the city, when any of the mental hindrances arise, doubt, sloth, and torpor, restlessness, worry, agitation, aversion or cravings, when any of these hindrances arise, the guard of mindfulness stops it at the gate. And we are determined to set it down, to come back to home base, take refuge in the present moment again and again. And working with patience and loving kindness, that if the mind wanders, gently bring it back without any judgment. Recognizing that this is the nature of mind. And through training, we have the potential to establish living in the present moment fully. If you're experiencing any discomfort, whether mental or physical, it may be helpful to call to mind a positive or joyful experience that occurred recently. And from there, generating and feeling that joy, feeling the gratitude for of goodness that has occurred recently, and taking that back into your practice, allowing that feeling of joy or gratitude or laughter, any one of those positive feelings to help you settle into this moment. And this practice is to open our heart and soften us to all of life, to the way things really are, and to the goodness that there is. When we practice, we are inclined to be more loving and more grateful and more at peace. And if you'd like to close with the loving kindness practice, the invitation is to bring your awareness to the heart center. And notice the sensations of breathing in the chest. Note, what does it feel like in the chest today? Is it heavy? Is there a tingling sensation? A tightness? A feeling of lightness? And now can you scan with your mind's eye other parts of the body where there may be tension or tightness, or where there is relief, where something shifted and softened and opened up. And with the energy of loving kindness, can you send words and thoughts of loving kindness to these parts of you? Maybe it's tension in the neck or shoulder. Maybe it's in the hips or the back. Maybe it's in the jaw or the hands, tightening of the fist. What is it that you'd like to say to that part of yourself that's still clinging, that may be feeling disease? Just like a mother or a father would speak loving words to their only child, what could you say to these parts of yourself? It's okay. You can let go now. Or, I'm sorry I've been tough on you. I'm going to take better care of you today. Please forgive me. Or maybe it's, I know you're there, and I know you're hurting. I'm here for you. Acknowledging and encouraging these parts within ourselves, and sending our breath throughout the entire body, sending this energy of love, of understanding, this energy of soothing. And we can say these words of loving kindness to each other and to ourselves. May I be happy. May I be at ease. May I be at peace. May I abide in well-being. May I be safe and protected. May I be free from anxiety, free from affliction, free from ill will. May I remember that happiness and peace is available in the present moment, simply by coming home to the breath and to the island within myself. Breathing in worries, doubts, fears, and anger, and breathing out, trusting, peace, confidence, and ease. Breathing in anxiety, breathing in restlessness and agitation, and breathing out calm, breathing out stillness and relaxation. And sending these wholesome qualities in all direction and to our spiritual friends in this room. We send them loving kindness and well wishes. We send each other loving kindness and well wishes. And to those in our neighborhood and in our city and state and in our nation and throughout the entire world, sending well wishes and loving kindness to our brothers and sisters, to those with 4 legs, to those that fly, to those that crawl on the ground, to the trees and the flowers, and the soil, remembering the interconnectedness of our life with all living beings. May we coexist harmoniously. this practice of mindfulness, we can integrate it into the moment when we open up our eyes, the moment that we are in motion, starting with this transition from stillness to movement. And knowing that it doesn't just end the moment that the bell is rung, but it's just a matter of shifting posture of mindfulness. And so now we open up our sense doors and we can become aware of all that enters through the sense door. And when we practice this awareness, can see things in a slow motion. That seeing happens, and then hearing, and then it switched from one sense door to the next. We discover this when we go to retreats, how it feels like time slows down. But it's really our awareness that can pick up the subtlety of this very clearly, very clearly. And you might experience that a bit here, that when we sit, all of a sudden we can hear our breath, we could hear the clock, we could hear things more clearly. And this is such with our thoughts, when we can still the body and mind, we can see more clearly what is going on. What is happening? Why am I stuck? Why can't I get to the root of this issue? And what's so great is that we could access this anytime, simply by remembering. What I love about it is that it's free. I love free stuff. So that's why I meditate, because first it was free, it was cheaper than therapy. And that it's a great investment. It's a great investment with really good returns, right? And the returns is just, it's unimaginable. We don't really know in what ways our lives benefit from it until we start to see it. But all we know is that we put in the work. We have faith in our teachers, in the Buddha, and all the spiritual guides, knowing that it's worked for other human beings. It's worked for the Buddha. And so if it works for them, it will work for us too. And so that kind of trust and confidence. And then the fact that it's free, right? Like, so why not do it? And why not do it often and a lot? So the more we invest into this at whatever age we are, the more we benefit as we go into that process of aging, decay, sickness, and death, that it becomes a little bit less scary. And we can do it perhaps more graciously. And along the way, we harm fewer people and ourselves. So we're going to transition now to mindful movement. And I'm thinking maybe we first start with some announcements. Okay. So Dan, would you like to come? There's a mic here. Okay. You're welcome.
Hey everybody, I'm Dan. Thank you, Trina, for that really beautiful guided meditation. Trina and I are, along with Paul.
It's low because of me. You sit,
I'm scaring people on Zoom. Sure.
there you go.
I mean, the demigod aspect is accurate. Yeah, Trina, Paul, and I, and are there any others in the teacher training program? There's, 9 of us, I believe, that, we're learning to engage on the Dharma through a 3-year program with Robert, and it's really gratifying to be here and to be part of this community in that way. And also with our teachers, full-blown teachers, Candle over here and Jim over here. Thanks so much for everything and for everybody for being here. And part of what we're doing as teacher trainings is kind of taking on the announcements. And with that, we have a really wonderful land acknowledgement that I'm gonna read here. And I encourage you to hear the words and take this as an opportunity for mindful listening. There's a lot baked into this statement, and a lot I think could arise for you. And I would just encourage you to let all of that be there and to notice. So we welcome all people of every age, ethnicity, cultural heritage, and religious background, socioeconomic group, ability, sexual orientation, and gender identity here at Portland Insight Meditation Community. We recognize and honor the indigenous peoples on whose ancestral lands PIMC now stands. We honor and recognize that the place where we gather is ancestral land for many people, including the Clackamas, Cowlitz, Multnomah, Molalla, Chinook, Tualatin, and others who are part of the 7 tribes of Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, as well as the many bands of Confederated Tribes of Siletz peoples and other Native communities who made their homes along the Columbia River. We respectfully acknowledge all Indigenous communities of the past, present, and future, and are grateful for their contributions and vibrant presence today. We acknowledge that these ancestral Indigenous communities were forced to leave for the benefit of colonists and settlers. We acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous families today. We are grateful for their stewardship of these lands and acknowledge the benefit we continue to receive. We are committed to remain mindful of and make ongoing efforts to recognize their knowledge, creativity, and resilience. Thank you. And then we have a few announcements. First, Sunday evenings on Zoom, there is the Be Queer Now group that is happening tonight, and again every Sunday. Also tonight, Sunday, Candle is doing an online gathering focused on insight as well as metta, and that's 2 Sundays a month, tonight being one of them. Jim, you have a retreat coming up on the first Saturday of July. That will be July 1st itself. Yeah, so some really great mindful movement. And every first Saturday, one of the teachers leads a half-day-ish retreat, half day to full day, depending on how you count a day, I guess. So definitely check those out. It's all online at portlandinsight.org. And any other announcements, Doug? Anything from you?
Do I have to sit down? Last time I didn't believe in reincarnation either. I'm Doug. I'm the volunteer coordinator Did anyone notice how nice it looked out front? Yes. Thank you to the Garden Club, Anne and Harrison. Anyone else that was here yesterday? There were 7 of us, and in about 2.5 hours, really got it spiffed up. So there will be another volunteer opportunity. In a month from now, we're going to have a garden club once a month during the gardening season. So if you are already getting Sign Up Genius about gardening opportunities, I'll send that out. If you would like to be included, see me after this during hospitality. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. I have a couple more announcements. Yeah. There's also the Be Queer Now group that meets every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. Oh, you did? Okay. And then the other part is our Youth Dharma program is going to launch in July. I'm very excited about that. The planning committee has been working for quite a few months now, and we have everything on the website. So you can go on to our website at portlandinsight.org to register. There's also a flyer out there where you can get in touch with Noel if you have any questions about the children's program. And next week, actually I miss it. We will begin July 9th. So that's 3 Sundays from now, and it happens on the 2nd and 4th Sunday of every month. We currently have our curriculum laid out to the end of the year. And so we have about, at last time I checked, 14 kids that are already signed up, and 2 teachers. And also next week, Noel and myself and a few other committee members will be present in the kids room, which is next to the drink station. And we'll have an open house for those who would like to come and hear more about the program and check out the space, and also meet the teachers. We're really excited to bring this back and offer a container where families can also come together. You know, I'm growing up in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition. It was part of the Sunday routine that the whole family, mom, dad, myself and my 5 siblings, we all went to temple. It didn't matter what age. And it was a place, a community place, a place that we would come and, you know, call it our second home, our refuge. And so this is in hopes that we can bring back this family environment where grandma and grandpa can bring their grandkids as well, where aunts and uncles you can bring your niece and nephews, and that this is the place where we can foster mindfulness and plant that seed of mindfulness and of loving kindness to kids. So please check it out online, and I'm also here if you have questions about it. I think that's it. Yeah. Yes, Candle. Yes. And the library is open. We have Connie is here. Hi, Connie. Do you want to talk about the library? Okay. Okay, yep. So Connie is here. If you'd like to check out any mindfulness or Buddhist books, we have an amazing selection of books. And if you have books that are sitting on your shelves and you'd like to distribute it and share it with others, you can donate to our library as well. Our shelves are getting pretty full. Yeah, it is. But it's welcome for everyone to check out. And, you know, I'm one of those people that when I borrow books, it takes me quite a few weeks. It was a couple months last time that I returned the last book, but there's no penalty. So that's also great. Yes.
And then the last note on the announcement front is talk a little bit about Dharma, which is generosity and the practice of giving. Trina noted, one of the wonderful things about the practice is that it's free and it's always available, and which is really true. But building upkeep and electricity bills and salary for staff and to pay teachers, that is not quite so free. And so we do ask that that you think about what it would mean to support the community financially. If you're here, you're just popping in for a Sunday, a suggested donation would be in the realm of, you know, what a yoga class might be, $15 to $25. We do have Venmo now at Portland Insight. You can donate directly that way. There's a QR code in the back also that will take you to the PIMC donate section of the website. And yeah, doing a one-time support payment is great, but even greater is joining our monthly giving program, where you can have an amount automatically deducted, and that lets us know what our budget is really on a long-term basis. And it's a practice. It's something that you can see what comes up when you think about giving and what emotions might arise. And one helpful piece of advice that was given to me on one of the first retreats I did was, you know, if you're a person that tends to really hold on financially and you have trouble opening up that way, that this is an opportunity to maybe push yourself a little bit. And at the same time, if you're a person that you seem to be overly giving, that it might be an opportunity to see what arises, what your impulse is, and then to actually maybe pull back on that. So it really is something that in my own practice, the realities of generosity and the practice of generosity has been so impactful and helped me understand my own ways of interacting with community and with other people, and what it really means to care about something and to give part of myself to support it. So with that, really encourage you to give what feels right for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Dad. Jim?
So how do I speak in my Trina voice? Actually, I listen to podcasts and have all kinds of stuff recorded on my phone. On the way over from Beaverton today, I listened to a Vietnamese poet, Vietnamese American poet. I'm going to probably pronounce his name wrong, but I think it's Ocean Vuong. And he said when he gets in front of people, he lowers his voice and speaks like his Vietnamese ancestors. When I got out of the car, I was feeling very deliberate in my, what's my value? What's my value? All right. I don't know how long I can keep that Irishman under control. It'll just, well, okay. So let's, wow. I'm gonna turn this down. Testing, testing, testing. Very better. Now, both feet on the floor, no tripping. I have a head according to this screen. So Trina was going to, I gotta steal Trina's notes. She's going to be talking about the 5 skandhas, or the 5 packages or bundles of energy that we were encouraged to explore, looking for a solid self, looking for a permanent anchor. When the Buddha taught meditation, he always started with the breath as an anchor. It's not a thing, it's a breathing. Our language makes us say things like, follow the breath as if it's a thing. But moving back and forth, we get a feeling in the body for the process that the body is. The body is not a thing. The body is constantly processing air, processing water, processing gravity from the earth, processing light coming in from all over. And there's processes underway every millisecond. And but bringing mindfulness to the rhythm of that movement gives us a way of anchoring in the body as if it were a thing. It's an anchoring of attention, of presence, of engagement with the body processes. And the 5 skandhas that we'll be hearing about are the body, the feelings, perception, mental objects, and consciousness. So let's start with consciousness. What happens when there's contact between one hand and the other? And then there's a movement away and contact. And if you put your attention into the joints on the hand reaching out, feel how the contact visually is right here, but the contact starts, the awareness of contact starts with the intention and the adjustment and the adjustment and the adjustment and contact. So the Buddha wants us to look at the thing we call consciousness and the thing we call the senses, the sense of touch, the sense of seeing, of hearing, smelling. I think it's these flowers that I kept smelling all during the meditation. It's every once in a while the contact of consciousness would be, what is that smell? Where's it coming from? Ordinarily, we don't smell perfume in here, but if that flower is full of perfume, it can't help it. It just does it. So the feeling of contact can be pleasant or it can be unpleasant. And so coming together with engagement can feel like connection, can feel like support, can feel like encouragement. But you can also have feelings that I don't want this. I don't want this. And so what the Buddha said is check out the body, check out the feelings, tone of the experience you're having, check out the perceptions. Now, look around and you'll see, well, I'm not going to tell you what you're going to see. Look around and ask yourself, what's 10 feet from me? Find one object that's 10 feet from me. And notice that the way you know that there's an object is that there's a boundary. and there's a foreground and a background. And forming perceptions is something that our nervous system does, and in order to get around, in order to feed ourselves and find water to drink and survive generally in this human form, there's objects that are beneficial and objects that are to be avoided, and we perceive them. There's perception. We know them because of the boundaries. And if we close our eyes, well, we're no longer making contact with the boundaries of that object we just identified, but now we have a memory of it, and there's a mental state that can hold a picture of what we saw, and that in that picture we can identify the boundary, the foreground, the background. So basically, these five elements of experience: having a body, being embodied, having feelings for and against the experience that's unfolding, and then knowing how far to go. But if we start moving with a gesture of gazing at the moon, we have a perception in our mind, an image. The window is here and it has a boundary. The moon is across beyond the frame, and it has a boundary. And then we have release, and then a new one. So we go from one perception to another, and the gesture has a boundary. This is as far as we go, the length of our curved arms. And this is the middle of the gesture, and then we go to the other boundary. And so using a perception, we can set up a rhythm that feels good, because it's not like the tension that we endure in ordinary experience in the traffic coming over here, for instance. Now we're using our body to unwind, to relax, and it feels good, but it has a limit. If we go too fast, if we go too hard, then the feeling nature of it, changes. And if we realize that, let's push away, that sometimes you have to clear the space in order to be in a harmonious relationship with our experience. We have to set up a boundary a little farther away, clear the space close in. And we do that through understanding perception, understanding the limits of the body, understanding the limits of our emotional state. Sometimes we have to put a lot of effort into creating boundaries. And then we do it with a group of people, and we see that everybody is enjoying that release that we feel. We see their movement, and that, I don't know how it works, but there's a mirror image inside my nervous system that knows something about how you feel. And you and we are feeling more release, more relaxation, more freedom from tension. And so then the idea gets developed in the community, in the Sangha that we are. We speak together, we share ideas, we have mental frameworks in which so this is what we do to heal ourselves. We lift from the lower part of our body up to the crown of the head, and we lift again. And this is not just a simple boundary, low and high gesture that starts here and ends here. It has a perceptive boundary, but it's also healing. Healing is a mental formation. It's our purpose. It's our love for one another. It's our love for our bodies. You see how these 5 skandhas can't really be separated. And the more I talk, the worse it gets. So, all right, open and release. When we do things together as a community of belonging, there's healing, healing of the heart, healing of the connective tissue in our body, healing in the brain that's struggling to figure all this stuff out all the time. And then we make a plan. Let's do this every morning from 7:30 to 8 o'clock at this particular place. And I did that with a group of people during COVID, and we're still going. We still gather in the morning to do things together because we share the mental formation of, I feel good. Feeling was number 2. The body is freer of stress. The perception of a circle of people working together is really reinforcing, and the notion of Sangha it enriches the consciousness of my connection with people and with the world. Does that make sense? All right. Thank you very much. I'll be here on the Saturday, first Saturday of July, and we'll probably talk about the skandhas again.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Is that good? Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. A sneak peek into what is going through this mind is, how am I going to give this talk in 25 minutes? And then there's also, the part of, feeling, that was worth a long meditation sit. I always err towards practice more than, the time that we spend consuming more materials and teachings. In today's society, we already consume so much information. So to keep it light and just a few words in the next 25 minutes or so, or 20 minutes or so, I think would just be enough. Okay, change this to gallery view. How's everyone out there in Zoom land? Good, yes, great, 2 thumbs up. Thanks, Laura. And Jamie, hi Jamie. Oh, glad you're here. So why is it important to learn about the 5 aggregates, or just to know it and contemplate it, and to be able to distinguish it in the moment that it arrives? I mentioned earlier just now that, we have so much information that we consume in a day. One of the troubles of modern day life is that in a day there's at least 60,000 thoughts that goes through our mind. And back in the Buddha's time, and times when things were without technology, things were simpler, on average, a person would have around 600, 700, 800 thoughts in a day. And so just imagine if now we have 60,000 thoughts that occur within a day. How overwhelming that is to have that constantly just flooding us. And Fred Luskin did this study, and that amongst that 60,000 thoughts, 90% of it is repetitive. Yeah. Yeah. And so when you think about the repetition of thoughts and how it just replays in the mind over and over and over again, it's quite tiring. It's dukkha, it's suffering to be dealing with a restless mind, a mind that is constantly flooded. And I'm sharing that as just to illustrate how a lot of our thinking is really unnecessary. And oftentimes with these thoughts that come in and out, arise and pass away, how often we identify to it and we take it to be real and true. And how upon identification to these thoughts or moods or feelings, we carry out certain actions or we say certain things, right? And it influences how we're being in the moment in our relationships. And so how much of it is really our choosing, these 60,000 thoughts? Are we really at agency that we can choose to do what we want when really these thoughts are what run us? So, and most of the time, this is coming out of conditioning based on our understanding of the psychological studies out there and based on our own inner work. We know that a lot of this, which I call my preferences, my thoughts, my feelings, my response and emotions to things, is coming from a conditioning, perhaps from our childhood, from something that happened in the past, and how it continues to show up today and in this moment. And so the Buddha, he drew out these 5 aggregates, the 5 skandhas, to help us understand that every aspect of our lives is a collection of this mind-body process, right? So these are ever-changing experiences. It's in constant flux. And this is what we constitute as our life, our being. And we think of this as our self. And so the 5 aggregates are first the body. So this is the body in the physical surrounding in which the body is in the space. And feeling, which is Vedana, the pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral. And then there's the perception, which is our recognition of what is happening, our interpretation of what is happening, and what is happening through the 6 sense doors of seeing, hearing, taste, touch, smell, and thought. And then there is the mental formation, the sankharas. And these are our desires, our wishes, our tendencies, our ideas and prejudices, and they are dependent on our conditioning and causes. And it's constantly being reshaped time and time again And then the last is consciousness. So consciousness, is this my consciousness? Or is it a collection of consciousness? And if it's mine, where did it come from? It was not born at the time. It was not born at the time that we came into being. And it doesn't just disappear when we die. So is it mine? And so when we look at these aggregates, another way that it's also described is heaps of clinging. Heaps of clinging. We can see that while we understand that these are not my thoughts, we can contemplate in daily life how when we cling to them, we make them to be permanent and true. And then they become the source of our suffering. Because what we take to be true is of this false belief. And we suffer because now we're seeing a distorted view of reality. And I want to just share some stats. I mean, today in society, one of the most troubling thing is the rate of suicide and depression. And this correlates with the fact that in modern time now, we are so flooded with thoughts, with information, and there's so many things that pull our attention in many different directions. So it's, I think of the young people and how much confusion there is, how hard it is to decipher what is real and true, right? When there's so much information. And I just read the stat that the rate of suicide is highest in middle-aged white men, and men die by suicide 3.4 times more than women. And then the age-adjusted suicide rate is 14 years old. When I think of that, I think of my own teenage years when I was suicidal. And I remember my parents had sent my siblings and I to the monastery in Westminster, California. And before that time, I had received a letter from one of the monks that my family we used to host monks and have them come and stay at our place. And so one of the monks from Canada wrote to me and said, dear child, you must remember how precious this human life is. And he said many things, and which I'm still very grateful for today, to have that kind of guidance in my life and to be close to a spiritual community. And so, that's really part of what we do with this Dharma Youth Program, is to help, children to develop the right view when they are in trouble. And this way that when we get entrenched in our stories, our viewpoints and our opinions, how we suffer because we're holding on. And we take things personally, right? We take our emotions very seriously, and it becomes very heavy. And we latch on very tightly to certain views, whether it's political views or views of how things should be done, views of how we should be and we're not, or our family members should be. And the ego construct is solidified and strengthened. And on the other side of that, there's also the ego that is broken as a result of destructive thoughts and limited beliefs that one has of oneself. and how that leads to depression and suicide. So the Buddha spends a lot of time talking about this, as it is important for us to, as practitioners, to be able to know when these aggregates are arising. So what is the right understanding of the 5 aggregates? First, to know that the self is composed of these 5 aggregates, and that self-grasping is the view that this self is somehow unique. The self is operating independently, and this that I take to be me, my, and I is permanent. Right? So that's a way that we grasp onto this sense of self. And I am made of my body, my feelings, my opinion, my views, my belief. And when we really take time to deconstruct that, how much of that is really ours? Right? Most of it is coming from conditions and causes. And this, the Buddha points out that this distorted view is the root of our stress, of our anxiety, of anger, of dissatisfaction. And a person who doesn't have the strong sense of self, of I, meaning that they have a low or no self-esteem, is also grasping to the self, grasping to a certain view of the self. And this person may have this kind of identification to self that is, I am not worthy, I am inadequate. There's still a self-referential point there. And so the Buddha points out that the self is not without a nature of its own. Right? So one way of detecting this is when we take that which is impermanent in the body or mind to be real and true. That's an identification to the 5 aggregates. And this defies the understanding, the teaching that impermanence really does exist all the time and everywhere. And by nature, what is impermanent is dukkha, is suffering, and it's stressful. And what is suffering can be transformed to be tranquil and to be cooled down. There is a teaching in the Samyakta Agama where the Venerable Sariputra shares a simile. And he says, it is like the son of a householder who is very rich and has much wealth. He seeks widely for a retinue that will protect his wealth. And then an evil person who is his enemy pretends to come as a close friend in order to become his retainer. He often waits for an opportunity, going to sleep late and rising early, looking after him nearby when he rests. He's careful and respectful in his affairs, modest in his words, causing his master to think of him with delight, to perceive him as a friend, to perceive him as a son, with utmost trust and without doubt, without guarding himself. Later on, with a sharp knife in his hand, he cuts off his master's life. So had the householder actually understood that the man pretending to be a friend wished his harm, would he have well guarded himself and not suffered harm? It is like this. In the same way, a worldling perceives these 5 aggregates of clinging as permanent, perceives them as ease, perceives them as health, perceives them as the self, perceives them as belonging to the self. He keeps guarding and cherishing these 5 aggregates of clinging. In the end, he is harmed by the enemy of the 5 aggregates of clinging, just as that householder was harmed by the enemy pretending to be a friend without realizing it. And where we are today, we, particularly in this country, we really do have lots of resources and the right conditions to be happy, to have peace. And so while we are in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, why is it that there's so much suffering, so much depression, and the rate of suicide is the highest here, right? And so this teaching illustrates that the enemy is not out there, is not in that other party, is not in the big corporate companies. It's within us. Is when we forget to guard ourselves from the thoughts, the feelings that may lead to unwholesome ways of being. And this is the teaching of the Buddha. This is why we must make an island for ourselves. And where we start when we want to bring about change and peace in the world is to start right here at home and to become a master of this mind and body construct. And we can contemplate an aggregate as an aggregate. When perception arises, I recognize this is a perception. When a thought arises, I recognize that this is a thought. Observing it rising and passing away. And Dojo Kyentse Rinpoche says, the idea of an enduring self has kept you wandering helplessly for countless past lifetimes. It is the very thing that now prevents you from liberating yourself and others from conditioned existence. If you could simply let go of that one thought of I, you would find it easy to be free and to free others too. If you overcome the belief in a truly existing self today, you will be enlightened tomorrow. So use any practice you do to dissolve this idea of I and self-oriented motivations that accompany it. And keep trying, keep practicing. Just like the fragrance of a lotus flower. Is the fragrance in the roots? Is the fragrance distinct from the roots? Is the fragrance in the stalk or the stem or the fine or coarser parts of the lotus? Or is it distinct from these parts? Where is the fragrance? The fragrance is not in the roots, and nor is the fragrance distinct from the roots. The fragrance is also not in the stem, nor the stalk, the leaves, or the stamen. Or is it distinct from these parts? So where is the fragrance? The fragrance is in the flower. And yet that is with us in the same way. The essence of I and me. Is it in this body? Is it distinct from this body? Is it in our perception, our consciousness? Or is it distinct from perception, distinct from consciousness. So we can contemplate this. And through Vipassana, through meditation practices, the thinning of the me occurs. And through the practice of loving kindness, we can learn to turn towards our thoughts rather than reject or dismiss them. And we can feel the contraction, the tension in the mind. And the Buddha lists some of the benefits of loving kindness, being able to sleep well, right? Having good friends, good company. I'd like to share one last quote from the Buddhist scholar Peter Harvey. And he talks about the aggregates in this way. Material form, which is the body. Material form is like a lump of foam. And feeling is like a bubble. Perception is like a mirage. And the constructing activities are like a banana tree, lacking a core, like an onion. Consciousness is like a magician's illusion. Material form is like a lump of foam, and feeling is like a bubble. Perception is like a mirage, and the constructing activities are like a banana tree, lacking a core, like an onion. Consciousness is like a magician's illusion. So I invite you to carry this throughout your days, to know an aggregate as an aggregate. In the moment you are in a conversation and you're having an exchange, or oftentimes when we're speaking, we're giving our opinion, and to know that I am expressing an opinion. This is an opinion. And when we are eating, to know preferences as preferences. And the freedom that comes with this kind of knowing goes beyond the conditioning and acting and feeding into the conditioning. We're kind of breaking from that. And how wonderful it is to be free of all those thoughts when we can practice mindfulness of whatever is right there in front of us. So I'd like to close with a chant. We had a little sneak preview of it earlier for those of you who came right at the top of the hour. This is actually from the Heart Sutra. Thich Khan translated this very beautifully, and in Pali Sanskrit is Maha Prajna Paramita, which means the insight that brings us to the other shore. And during the pandemic, Joshua and I would chant this every night, and it's wonderful. Like I mentioned, when we chant, we memorize the teachings, and then it becomes a part of us. And when we contemplate and reflect, we pull from the memory of these words. So we're going to play an audio of the Plum Village monastics chanting to this very lovely piece, and feel free to read along, or if you'd like to just let the word resonate, and you can take this with you too. Let's see if the Zoomers can hear us as well. Do you want me to share the? Oh, you got it. Okay.
The insight that brings us to the other shore. True. the other shore. Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhisvaha.
Hmm. So, my final last words to you before we depart is, can we meditate every day, whether it's for 20 or 30 minutes or even 10 minutes? It's like we are just getting onto the boat and we're just settling into the boat. Now, when we go onto retreats, we can actually get onto the boat, get settled in, and finally start rowing the boat and get closer to the other shore. And so I hope that is coming back today to community is a reminder for all of us to remember to practice diligently and to create space in your life where you can practice for an extended period of time, to practice this thinning of the me and to come closer to the other shore. And we have a taste of liberation, a taste of freedom, a taste of emptiness. So thank you for your kind attention and for your presence in community. I'm really honored and grateful for the opportunity to share this with you, and I really cherish our time together. Thank you very much for your practice. And please join us in the living room for tea and coffee and snacks. And for everyone on Zoom, thank you for joining in from far away. Good to see you. Hi, Wally. Oh, right back at you, Jason. And if you'd like a copy of this, of either one of these, please maybe send a message to, you can send a message to me, Mindfulness with Trina, or to our community connections, and I can share this with you all. And wishing you well, dear friends.